All right, how is everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA, and thanks for checking out the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I want to get into today is cars. So lately I've been spending a lot of time with my father in his, I guess you could say, vintage car. He has a 1980 Zimmer Golden Spirit, and I've been going to a lot of car shows when I'm in town. He's obsessed with the auctions and all these type of things on television. It's almost like it went from, I always say things kind of come in trends. For a while, the hot thing was poker, and now it seems to transfer to cars a little bit. I mean, cars have always been around, but anyways, right now everybody seems to be talking about a lot of cars, at least the people I'm around. And what I find quite interesting, too, is a lot of people I'm seeing on social media doing a lot of their marketing with even wealthy guys or pretending to be wealthy, or all these coaches, mentors. They're always either in a Bentley or in a Rolls now, or they're walking in front of these, or they're showing you their homes in the backdrop with all their Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, all these type of cars. And I did some research on that as well. I watched some videos on why they're doing that, and obviously a lot of people pay attention. And I pay attention too, because I love luxury cars, or all different types of cars. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a mechanic or any of that bullshit, or I'm obsessed with cars, but I do like nice cars. And they've done a study where younger people especially, they love cars and women. Let's face it. So one of the guys who you probably see him, I'm not going to say who it is, but he's always marketing himself on Facebook, on YouTube, and everywhere. And he always walks and shows you his cars in his garage and everywhere. And he said his age demographic, there's younger guys. And also, when he was putting these videos up, he was getting a lot more likes and a lot more views with those cars. And one thing I want to say about those cars, which I find quite interesting when a lot of these guys claiming to be millionaires, which some of them are, I don't believe all of them are, and that same goes for artists as well. That could be rappers, singers, all these type of people with showing you all their cars. A lot of them don't tell you how much money they're losing on their cars, I guess you could argue. And I find it interesting that a lot of these people are giving advice regarding financing, which if you're a millionaire, a multi-millionaire, there's nothing wrong with buying a lot of cars, or you could buy any car you want for that matter. But I don't think a lot of people, especially the average Joe, realizes how much money they're losing when they buy a lot of these luxury cars. Now, that doesn't mean every car I'm talking about. I'm not going to start specifying certain cars, but a lot of people I know that are extremely wealthy, or not wealthy, or they buy these cars and they lose a lot of money on them. They also go through a lot of aggravation with maintenance. So just even recently, I said, before I do this podcast, let me reach out to my cousin. He brought a convertible Lambo. And one of the reasons I did that is my father, he was at a car show, and somebody wanted to trade him, not one, but two different people, their Lamborghinis for my father's car. I wasn't actually at the show with him, which I would have took the Lambos. I'm not going to lie. But after my father actually refused them, which kind of blew me away. Because one of his favorite cars of all time is a Lamborghini. And I think the bottom line is he just didn't want to get rid of his car. He loves it too much. And I think maybe he's in his mid-70s roughly, and he's heading into his 80s. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't want to drive the Lamborghini. Maybe it's too fast, the upkeep. I don't know. He called me screaming that, why did I blow the deal? And I said, well, maybe you blew the deal because you're really not as interested in that car as you thought you were. You love your car. So I reached out to my cousin, and he has a convertible Lamborghini, and he actually texted this back to me. So I said, just for my father, I was doing this for, and I said, hey, for starters, what's your insurance just for your Lambo? And I think it's a couple years old, his Lamborghini. And he said his insurance was around $5,500, and that's if he does $3,000 or less. If he goes over that, it goes higher. And I think he did his insurance through his homeowners or something like that. So you got to realize that's a lot of money just for insurance. And he has a good driving record, mind you. What else did he write here? Alrighty. And then the maintenance for the car, according to him, is about $7,500 a year for the Lamborghini, which is quite interesting. Again, I don't know if this is what he paid or what he went through. Again, I'm not here to go anti-Lambo. But what he claims is he's losing, owning that car, about $20,000 to $25,000 per year after everything is said and done with the depreciation value. But then I guess after a while, it hits $100,000 according to him in the text, it levels off. But if you think about it, and I always talk about this, how cars are, for the most part, are the worst investments you can make a lot of times. Now, that doesn't mean if you get a car that appreciates. I was just having this discussion with my father actually at the last car show saying, it's interesting, a lot of people buying a lot of new cars or cars that are a few years old. Doesn't matter what range they are. It could be all the way to the top, to the middle, even lower end, how they depreciate. Now, that doesn't mean every car depreciates. Again, I want to make sure I'm clear. But a majority of the cars that are out there are depreciating. Now, if you get a vintage or a historic or a car that's a collector's, it's very interesting because those seem to be going up in value. The only thing is you usually can't get a loan for those type of cars. But if you really sat back and said, wow, if I brought an older, a lot of people like to buy old Mustangs, old Chargers, old Corvettes, old Mercedes, all these different type of cars that they know they've kind of gotten to the point where they're appreciating. They're not depreciating anymore, right? Again, hard to get a loan on them. But if you get a car, I don't know what type of car you've gotten, you've probably realized after you gone in, purchased it, put your money down. Hopefully you realize this. You put your money down, you pulled out of there, your car already depreciated, just pulling it out of the lot, making your payments, maintenance, unless you have a warranty. By the time you go to trade that car in or go to sell it, you're usually upside down. Not every time. And again, that depends on how much money you put down. But look after, the entire time you had that car, how much it depreciated. It's really amazing. And you got to realize too, a lot of people are taking loans out for longer and longer periods of time. When I was younger, a 4-year loan was pretty long. Then they went to 5. Now they're up to 6.5 years. I think they even offer 7-year loans for a car. It's fucking ridiculous. The money you're paying in interest for this car, and for the most part, the average person only keeps their car 3 to 4 years, really, which is crazy. So you end up getting this car, and again, when you go back to trade it in or go to sell it, you're upside down on it. You can't it's just crazy. And I'll just give you an example. So a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, I moved back to Florida, and I saw a really good deal on a convertible Mercedes, 2004, and 320 CLK, and it was the car. I loved that car that year, that style. I just loved it, and there was one with like 30,000 miles. It was a great deal that I scored somewhere. It was about 4,000 less than even Blue Book value. I said, I'm grabbing this. The only problem was the top needed to be fixed, and some shifting was a little clicking. So that's why I got a good deal on it. They were nervous, so I took it anyways, took it in. I knew a great mechanic. He fixed both things for me. So that was wonderful. I got a really good deal on that. And a lot of times I'll go to auctions. Well, I used to go to auctions. That's really where you're going to get the best deal for a car is an auction. You may get burned a little bit, but the money you still save is unbelievable. Again, you just have to be able to purchase the car when you're there. But nonetheless, back to my 2004 Mercedes. Got it with 30,000 miles. Now, I'm only at 79,000 miles now, and it is pretty mint. Anyone who sees it is blown away about how, because me and my father were kind of obsessed with keeping cars mint. So I have 70,000 miles on it. And I said, just for shits and grins, I said, let me go and see what my car is valued at. Like, of course, you're going to go to Blue Book value. They're claiming it's worth around $5,000 or it sells around there. Now, the sticker price for that car, I have it inside my glove compartment, was I think $66,000 right there. That didn't include tax or anything else. So roughly probably around over $70,000. And that's back in 2004. So that'd be like almost $80,000 now. But when I went to go to a dealership, I just wanted to see. So I went to, first I just went to CarMax, because a lot of times it's a no haggle, and they'll just tell you what they're willing to offer you for the car. Now, mind you, a 2004 convertible, pretty mint Mercedes. He came back out, when I pulled up, which was amazing, he's like, oh my God, this car's mint. You only have 79,000 miles? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, you looking to buy a new car? I said, possibly. He goes, well, you're going to be really good with this car, because this, and he started bullshit me, typical car salesman. I said, yeah, first I want to see what you'd give me for it. I want to see, because a lot of times CarMax will offer you cash or a trade-in value. I said, I just want to see how much bullshit's going to come out of this. He comes back, sits down, is trying to sell me another car. I says, I'm not interested right now. I just want to know what you're going to give me first for my car. You know what he threw me at? $2,000. Now, is that something that depreciates? Now, I know they would sell that car for a lot more, and a lot of times when you go to a car dealership, they're going to be like, this was his pitch again. You know what? That's all we're going to get. That's all we're going to probably get at the auction. Which most likely, a lot of them lie. He's not going to take that to the auction. My car is pretty mint. He just got to put it in the lot. probably put it up for sale for $5,000. Somebody either pay it outright or cash. Pay it outright in cash or finance it, and they'll make money off the financing. But that's just an example, and I've owned tons of nice cars. I mean, I've had a lot of good and a lot of bad. And I'm going to just give you another example because I really want people to understand that don't let people take advantage of you when you're going to buy a car in a car dealership. That's the main, basically, premise of this podcast because I see it happen all the time, and I want to get nuts and choke somebody. I get so aggravated at car dealerships that I can't even go in them anymore. That's how crazy I get with them, with their pitch and their bullshit. So the producer of my podcast, who helps me with my podcast and my program and everything, he's been looking for a new car. So this is kind of how I wound up in this podcast situation. I feel bad because he's young and people are trying to take advantage of him sometimes, and I nip it in the bud very quickly, whoever he's talking to, not to be an asshole, just to be fair, and I want him not to be taken advantage of. But a lot of people do get taken advantage of. But this is really interesting because not long ago, my father used to own an Italian beef stand downtown Orlando, Florida. And he has, it's located on Colonial Drive, which is a very, very busy street. I think it's the busiest maybe in Central Florida. And there's tons of car dealerships running west of there. Correct? Yes, all west. There used to be a bunch even right across the street from him, a Pontiac dealership, all these different dealerships. But once you cross over OBT, it's basically all car dealerships. And then there's Orange Blossom Trail too, which has a lot of other car dealerships as well. So my father has all these regulars that are car people, and then there was a car that I used to love, which was like a 300 Hemi. I love that car. I got it when it was Car of the Year in 2004, and then I ended up getting rid of it. And I always missed that car. I liked that car, and I ended up getting a Volvo on a really good deal. So my father calls me up and says, hey, there's a bunch of guys here. They were talking about the new cars they were getting in. They got a new 300 and Hemi. Sounds like your old car, but it's black, and I usually only like silver anyways. He's like, you should go check it out maybe. I told him that you like that car and you miss it and this and that. And I said, yeah. And I was kind of excited. So I went to go see this guy. The mistake I did was bring my daughter with me to a car dealership because I'll get nuts and call them a jag-off right in front of their face. I get crazy when they start pitching their bullshit and they try to manipulate you or haggle and all these things. So I went there. And what was interesting is the year that car was the same year of my Volvo. So they're the same. I had less miles than the car I was going to look at. Nonetheless, I walk in and the guy goes, oh yeah, I know your father. All of us love your dad and this and that. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, I got the car. I'm like, where's the car? He goes, oh, we're not done. We didn't get it to where it needs to be yet. It's not running correctly and this and that. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. He's like, come on, I'll show you anyway. So I don't know if it's a lift in the mechanics thing so that it's up on the thing. I get nervous. I don't like to stand under the cars. I said, okay. I couldn't even look at it. So then he goes, let's talk about this. So what do you got as a car? And I told him my Volvo and my miles, which were less than the car, the Chrysler. So we go to sit down and he hits me with a price. And first of all, it's a lot higher than even, Blue Book value as far as excellent condition, which I'm thinking my dad said this guy's going to, well, I should have said that. He's going to cut you a great deal. This is a regular and have him come in. I'm going to definitely take care of him. So that kind of and I literally said to him, you understand, we all have the internet. I know what the value of this car is with these miles. Oh, yeah, this and that. So I'm letting him talk his shit or whatever. So I go, okay. And he goes, can we see your car? I'm like, of course. And my car literally was in better condition than this car. And my car was actually valued higher than this car. He comes back and starts bitching about my car. Well, this and that. Volvos, people complain about them. They can't always get them fixed. I'm like, yeah, I got it. And this and that. He's like, but here, I'm going to give you a deal. We're going to do this. And I think what we can do is we'll finance. I'm looking at him. I didn't expect to go there, though, with the intention of a swipe. Like, all of a sudden, this guy's going to give me that car for, because my car was valued more than his car. I didn't expect that. I expected him saying, hey, Rich, maybe give us a few grand, maybe, if this is really the car you want, or maybe a couple grand, or let's work something out. And again, not looking for anything other than to be fair. This guy comes back and says, all right, we're looking at around 10 grand because your car's only valued at this when you trade it in. And I was like, wait a minute, you think I'm going to pay you an additional 10 grand plus give you a car that's actually valued higher than your car? And he's like, well, it's not really like that. We can only give you what we can give you for your car. So in my head, I'm like, then, okay, so the guy who gave you this car or wherever you got this car, would you value? That makes no sense to me. right? If you think about that. So basically, they got the 300 from somebody, probably devalued it to death to them. Now they're devaluing my car to death, and then they want me to pay probably, I don't know, maybe, 50, 60, 70, I don't know how much more percentage than what they already have into this car. I literally said to him in front of my daughter, I said, are you a fucking jagoff? I got so upset with him. Well, one thing is, I'm going to say this though. He was a black dude, I'm a white dude. And I think a lot of times people get a little offended by me. And I understand sometimes I can be very offensive, and I don't mean to be a lot of times. But I don't think he's ever had somebody talk to him like that, the way I was talking to him. And he called me out on it. And I was kind of embarrassed because my daughter was there and she was getting very nervous. But I said, listen, I don't go for your bullshit. You're not going to fucking charge me an extra 10 grand for a car. I know that my car is more valued than yours. You're not going to devalue my car. And I'm not going to finance $10,000 for you. So it was almost like when people want to insult your intelligence, and I'm not the most brilliant guy in the world, but when people try to take advantage of you, and I don't care if the person across from you is black, white, Hispanic, Jewish, whatever nationality or whatever your religious background or your political, I don't give a fuck. Lay it out there. Tell people. Sometimes I name call, and I hate that about myself. But if you're treating me like a jagoff, I'm going to call you out on it, and then I'm going to start treating you the way you're going to kind of treat me, but more maybe even aggressive. Is that good or bad? Probably bad. But I'm not going to let somebody think they're going to swab me or take advantage of me. And I think a lot of people get caught in these situations because they're thinking, wow, if I say something negative towards this person, this can happen, or they're going to look at me like this, or whatever the case may be. Fuck that. Lay it out there. What was interesting is after I left there, I was so aggravated. I felt bad because I'm like, oh my God, these are a bunch of my dad's regulars. And the whole dealership, like a few guys started surrounding us because I'm like, dude, he got a little huffy puffy, then I got really huffy puffy, and I really didn't care. And once I got a little goofy, then my daughter, I got very upset a little bit, and then I had to leave there. Because the way he was talking, what he tried to set something up was so ridiculous, that was so almost offensive to me. And very seldom do I get that mad at somebody, but car dealerships are already a lot of times on my shit list, I guess you could say. So I had to call my father. I think I went and saw him. And I almost got mad at my dad. Like, how'd it work out? Did he give you the deal? He said he was in. And I explained the whole thing. He's like, did you give him a crack? Like, he really thought like I got that upset. I'm like, no. But I said, I'm so sorry. If these are your regulars coming in. And he's like, don't worry about that shit. He's like, but I was actually a little comforted that he didn't get very upset with me, because the last thing I want is dealerships to stop going to his restaurant, and that's the last thing I'd ever want to do is hurt my father's business. But I do get a little nuts with certain things like that. But he understood completely, and I explained that he was almost like taken back himself. Like, why do people do that? And that's what I'm back to as well, again, with don't let anyone take advantage of you. I don't care if it's a car. I don't care what you're going to buy or what position you find yourself in life, at your workplace. Don't let people manipulate you. Stand up for yourself. Sometimes I do let a lot of things slide, even in the workplace or wherever I'm going. And, certain things you got to pick your battles. But here's the thing, and I did this in another podcast a little bit, and that is when you're going to purchase something, you have to realize you are holding all the cards. Salespeople have nothing. They may have a product, but believe me, there's tons of different products you can go buy. When you kind of let them know that you're mainly interested in only their product, or you're kind of caught up in that, you're weakening yourself. But the truth is, when you go to buy anything, especially a car or something like that, they have no leverage. You have the leverage. And there's a little Italian that I know that he's a waiter at one of the restaurants that I go to, and he just also got taken advantage with a car. And he told me he went in there. He was just looking for a new car. We're starting to bullshit back and forth. Then they said, let us see your car. They took his car keys, drove it around, came back. We're working a deal out. And then he was kind of upset. He wanted to leave. And they wouldn't give his car keys back. I told him, you call me next time somebody takes your car keys. And they kept saying, no, we want to cut a deal. That's why we don't want to give you your car keys back. We want to make this work. Who the fuck are you to hold somebody's car keys, to do that? And I know they took advantage of him. Then he ended up getting the car, and now he was upset with the car. That he's paying too much for the car. He didn't realize, the value of the car, and it's not worth what they said it was. To make a long story short, again, here's something else. Make sure, I don't care if it's your parents, your brothers, your sister, anybody else that you can help help them not get taken advantage of. I think a lot of times we don't reach out. Like, somebody's looking for a car, or someone needs help buying something. I don't care if it's even a house. Do some research, right? Study and see what the per square footage is selling on average, not what it's selling for now. A lot of times you may go to a place and the average is $134 a square foot. I'm just using for an example. And then you start looking and everybody's selling it $160, but it's never selling. Then they'll be like, the real estate agents will be like, oh no, it's in between there. No, you're full of shit. I've done study for the last year. The high end is this. The low end is this. You're way beyond that. That's why this fucking house doesn't sell. Just try to make sure you really protect yourself. All right. And we started off with cars, now we're in houses. I didn't mean to kind of go that way, but here's something too you got to realize too when you're purchasing something, no matter what it is, for the most part, not everything, you're going to get sick of that after a while. I know a ton of guys, a friend of mine just brought a Maserati not long ago. After 6 months, sick of it, wanted to get rid of it. There's a lot of celebrities, even locally, I see, buying cars, and people I even know, a lot of people, once that rush and kind of you show it off, a car, and it may be a great car to you. A $20,000 car in your financial, position may be a great car. Somebody a $50,000 car. You want to show it off, drive around. $200,000 car, whatever the case may be, you are going to most likely, not always, unless you really, really love the car, you're going to get sick of it. So you really got to think when you purchase something like an automobile. Again, this is not for collectors. Collectors is a whole different thing. I'm just talking the average Joe out there. When you buy this car, you may love it and want it now, but just like anything else, you are going to move on and want something else. So you have to think about that. How you value that right now is going to be a lot different than the value in a couple years. That goes for usually anything in life. Sometimes even relationships. I kind of talk about that in my Mastering Self-Confidence program, the honeymoon phase and all these things. Like the beginning of the relationship, it's awesome. This is the one for me. At the beginning, you're like, wow, I can't believe that, this is the one that I've been waiting for my whole life. Or this is, it all seems great at the beginning until the deeper you get into it, the more, you realize it may not be what I thought it was. And that the same goes for cars. And if you really look at a car, its job is to pick you up and take you somewhere. Don't get me wrong, now they have different things where, you got a thing where it'll show you when you're backing out, or you got a better sound system, you got a better stereo, it's got Wi-Fi, whatever the hell it has, Wi-Fi, I don't care what it is. But really, it's more of an identity thing than anything else. What are you willing to pay for the identity of you being in this car? And it's not like a house, you know what I mean? Like if you live in a certain neighborhood, that's a different type of identity. You live there. There's a protection component. Your neighbors. There's all these different components when you're purchasing a home compared to a car. A car is a piece of metal usually that surrounds you with seats, and basically you go from A to B. That's all you're really doing when you break it down. Now back to cars, as far as if you really love cars. And I tell people this, if you try to figure out how to get financing, or if you can't afford it outright, a lot of people can't, start purchasing or driving cars or fixing up cars that are going to go up in value, right? And, a lot of times with the economy, things change with cars. I know right now the car trend is hot. So some cars are, you see them on these auctions. You're like, holy shit, I had that car. I brought it for, in 1985, like I had a Grand National. I brought it for X amount, whatever, 17 grand, and now they're selling for 35. But you got to realize how long ago that was. But my case being is I was actually thinking, I just saw one at a car show. I'm like, I wouldn't mind buying a Grand National again as my next car, because if I can find one for a good deal, as long as it's an 87, don't get anything below it, because it doesn't have a intercooler. So there's a heads up if you do like the Grand National, the Buick Grand National. I had an 85 in Florida and I kept blowing the turbo. You want to get an 87, but the point being is that even if I found one that just wasn't in the greatest condition, that I put a little money into it, I'm not going to get upside down, and it kind of keeps appreciating. Think about doing something like that. And again, doesn't have to be a car. Like a lot of guys are trying to buy $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 cars thinking, hey, maybe it'll appreciate the 100 grand. You don't always necessarily have to go that high. You can find cool vintage cars, even IROCs or Camaros or all different things. Cars that, and this is coming from me. I'm not a gearhead at all. But again, when you're purchasing things, I just want you to keep in mind, am I buying something that's devaluing or that's going to really value? It's bringing more value to me. And I think a lot of times when we're watching these coaches, mentors and stuff in these cars. For one, I don't think they own them. Like I said, a lot of them I think are leasing, which depending on the deal they get, I don't know, but a lot of them put a lot of money down, which again, that money's gone, and then you only can drive them a certain amount of miles, and then you have to trade it in. And again, I love cars as well, but if I look back over the last X amount of years that I've spent in cars, you look back and go, Jesus, I could have literally I could have taken a lot of that money. Instead of paying financing or even a large downstrokes or all these things, I could have put it in better places. And again, I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm just doing this podcast because I want you to be aware of those things. And the two, for the most part, not everybody, some of the biggest purchases you make in your life are cars and then homes or condos or whatever the case, businesses as well. But if you're younger, the first thing you usually end up doing is buying a car, and I think a lot of guys end up spending too much money on a car at the beginning. They also put a lot of stress on themselves, so your car payment's a little high. You get beat up on your insurance as well. You get beat up on your downstroke. A lot of guys don't have the credit they need. All these things, insurance, did I already say that? You look at the end of the month, what am I spending on this car? And then if you don't have warranties, the maintenance as well. Because when I had, I remember me and my buddies ended up getting a 3-bedroom apartment. And then I had a gray National, then I brought a convertible Mercedes. And what else did I have? We had a convertible Caddy. Anyways, it was funny because I was paying at one of the top apartment complexes in the early 90s. It was $900. And we lived amongst all these, who lived there? Like New Kids on the Block? One of those dudes, the dudes from Nickelodeon were there. All these Universal Studio guys in Orlando. We were right by the studio. We had all these people there that were shooting shows. And what was interesting is it only cost me and my buddies $300 per person. We had 3 of us. And then actually like 10 of them lived there. It was like a frat house. But then we had the electric and the phone bill. So it was $400 a month. And then I had a nice car then. And I think I was paying, say $700-800 a month for my car, maybe $700. And then after, that doesn't include all the other things I want to add to it or whatever else I was doing. And then when the warranty runs out. But I'm paying twice as much for a car than I was actually paying for my rent, which is whack if you really think about that. I didn't necessarily have to spend that much money on that car, but I did. And I think nowadays, especially, like you could get a lot of cool cars relatively cheap. You could really, that have all the bells and whistles that you don't have to spend even 40, 50 grand, even 30 maybe. There's some deals out there. Again, you may not necessarily like the style car, but even if you wait for a car, I always say like that's got 30,000 miles, 1 or 2 years old, maybe even 3 years old. You already, all those lost, like pulling it out of the lot, like all those things are kind of gone. It's got some miles on its use. Some of the depreciation kind of levels off a little bit. It's the first 2 years I think you just get beat up to death. And here's something I told my friend about recently is, years ago people were like, when you rent a rental car, people beat the shit out of them. Nowadays it's quite the opposite. I live in rental cars. People maintain them when they drive them because if something goes wrong, it either dings their insurance, and a lot of them don't like to pay for insurance through the rental car, so they actually maintain the cars, and they want to make sure nothing happens to them. But I don't know if some people know this, some don't. They have like Hertz and Dollar, all of them. They have areas or their own dealerships where they sell these cars, and they're really good deals, a lot of them. I know they were a car rental. Here's the other thing about a car rental. A lot of times there's only one person sitting in them, max 2. So a lot of the back seats are mint. The only thing is the back trunk area is a little beat up because they pull out your suitcase a lot of times. They get banged up. And they're not going to be mint, but they offer really good deals. The other thing is car dealerships also, they make sure they're maintained. They're always being detailed every time someone comes back with the car. They keep up with the oil changes. They have to make sure those cars are running very efficiently. A lot of times when you're buying a car from a dealership that's used, you don't know what the hell that person was doing in that car for the last. They could have been a pigsty. They could have beat the shit out of it themselves, not keeping up with oil changes. But at least when you get a car through a car rental, there are some strengths to that. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I like to do a half-an-hour increments. So, definitely be aware if you're young. Don't be taking advantage when you go to... that's one last thing I am going to do. When you're going to buy your car, because I could go through a lot of things, here's the thing, and it's very simple. I know a lot of times they're throwing shit at you like, your car's worth this. You're kind of, when you bring your car in, if it's not paid off for, they're going to be like, you're upside down this amount of money, we're going to need this amount of money down, and then all these different types of things. Your credit score is involved, all this shit, and they're throwing all these things to almost kind of confuse you, okay? First thing first, when you go find the car you want, right, break down the payment that you want to pay per month, okay? The amount of years as well, okay? You have to go in there with an idea of exactly what you want to put down, if you want to put anything down, what you want to pay per month, right? And what you expect to walk out of there paying. So I'll just give you an example. It's real simple if you sit down with a car. After they talk all their shit, right? All you do is say, okay, let's hypothetically say my payment is $300 a month, $3,600 a year. Times it by 4, right? Okay, it's this amount. Or 4 years, 5 years, whatever the amount is. All you do is say, what they get when they give you your payment, times it by the amount of the loan, right? And just look at that amount, and then look at the amount you're paying for the car, subtract it, and that's basically what you're paying in interest rate. It's real simple. So if you buy a car and they say, here's your payments, they add up to 20 grand in 4, 5, 6 years, or I'm just using for an example, 40 grand, right? Then you're like, at the end, after you made all, so you add your payments. At the end of that, you look at it and there's the difference. And a lot of times you look at it and go, wait a minute, I'm purchasing this car for 30 grand, but after I make all my payments, I'm at 45 grand. I'm not paying you fucking $15,000 in interest. Are you out of your mind? Tell them right to their face. Then you adjust to what you need to adjust to. If you can't get what you want, you don't deserve the car. Find something you can find affordable, but just like I told you, don't pay that interest rate where, again, even if I don't care if you're buying a $10,000 car. A lot of my friends always get beat up. They're buying like a $15,000, $20,000 car, and then I said, add up your payments, dude. Just look at that's the bottom line. What are your payments? What do they all add up to, right? And then what are you buying your car for? Just subtract it. And a lot of times that's exactly what you'll see what you're paying in interest. Because a lot of times, again, when you're buying that car, they're not telling you, oh, you forgot, there's this tax, and then we have to add this type of mortgage insurance, I'm sorry, I'm talking house again, I'm sorry, automobile and protection plan, and okay, now you want, which is fine, now you want to get an extended warranty, and you want this and that, so you walked in there to buy a $20,000 car, it was 20 grand. Before you know it, you're financing 26, 27 grand, or maybe 25, I don't know. But after everything is said and done and after you pretend you made all your payments for whatever, 5, 6 years, all of a sudden you're realizing, oh, wow, I'm at 35 grand. So first of all, I thought I was only going to spend 20. I'm already 15 grand over. Just make sure you protect yourself is basically what I'm saying. And it's very simple. And I know interest rates and all that shit scare people. And remember, I would try to put the least amount of money down as possible if you can, or just put a couple grand down. Again, if you're millionaires and all this doesn't relate to you. I'm talking people that are on a fixed income, because most of the time, I know a lot of times they'll be like, put all this money down, it'll lower your payment. Listen, you're giving them a lot. If you got to put down 5, 10 grand, it's gone when you pull out of there. It is gone. It may lower your payment. You just lost 5 or 10 grand. Plus, your car's depreciating when you're pulling it off the lot. Don't ever forget that as well. Not only that, you're going to have to maintain that car. Again, warranty. You may have a warranty or not, or whatever the case may be, but you keep losing money. Keep your money in your pocket. Just make sure your payment is something you can afford and that you're not getting beat up and you don't pay too much in interest. If you have shitty credit, I get it. Get a cosigner, I don't care if you got to ask your parents. Just don't make them nervous and say, oh, yeah, you're going to have a $700, $800 car payment, or even $500. Say, hey, Dad, Mom, or whoever, friends, I don't care, aunts, uncles. You just make sure you pay that loan from, because a lot of times your payment could go, if you have shitty credit, you may be paying $500 a month. Somebody with good credit, you're only paying $350. It's a huge difference when you go to buy a car having decent credit too. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for listening to the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? And you can check out my program, the Rich CELENZA. The hell am I talking about? My program is Mastering Self-Confidence, the blueprint to helping men find the woman or woman of their dreams, even if they've been through a bad breakup or divorce. I have a YouTube channel. I have a Facebook page. We are on Twitter and LinkedIn. And just so you know, a lot of times I don't edit these podcasts. I just like to free flow with it, because I think sometimes when these things are so edited, they kind of come out bullshitty. So there are going to be mistakes. The audio isn't always going to be perfect. I'm just always trying to be as raw as possible. And don't let anyone fuck with you. I'm telling you right now, don't let anybody ever take advantage of you, okay? And if anybody got a problem with you, hit me up, hit me on a comment, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll always try my best to give people advice. And I can only give you advice to what I've gone through in my life, all right? And I tell people all the time, I try to help people, even in my program, but no matter what I do or what anybody else tries to do for you, that goes for consulting, coaching, trainers, anything, it's up to you to really learn what works best for you. Okay? All right. Well, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best.